So let's talk about capitalism versus socialism. Which one is better? Let's first start with the definition of those two because people are using them loosey-goosey, right? They don't even know what the definition means. So we're going to be using classical definition. So capitalism, in a nutshell, the classical definition is private entities, so whether that is nation states, corporations, and individuals, have the ability in an open society to trade with other entities, and through that trade, they redeem profit to the owners of that entity. So it's an open network. In socialism, classical definition is the state has a means of production. So the state is your business partner. The state plans the businesses, they plan the prices, they plan everything. Absolutely centralized. Everything's 100% centralized with a group of people to decide everything for everybody else. That's the classical definition. Now, if you look at today, people throw these terminologies around. That's socialism. That's capitalism. That's not the case. It's not that black and white. In fact, anywhere you go in the world, there's no binary viewpoint like that. For example, in North America, we have a hybrid system, especially here in Canada. We have a system of capitalism and a system of socialism. Now, it's not socialism per se with central planning. It's socialistic programs, such as our healthcare system and other systems that we have over here, welfare system, etc. Now, if you look at capitalism over here, it's not pure-blooded capitalism. It's crony capitalism. You have Wall Street, you have the bankers, you have the Fed, you have special treatment. You have lobbyists going to the Senate and making laws that are preferable to them. And you have all these crazy stuff, right? So it's not true-blooded capitalism. Now, let's kind of dive in deeper to capitalism and socialism. These are symptoms. I wouldn't say symptoms. These are byproducts of an underlying principle. So in capitalism is a byproduct of an open society. In North America, we have one of the most open societies in the world, primarily Canada and the United States, more or less in the United States, right? The United States have freedom of speech in the Constitution. Canada doesn't have that. But more or less, I am free to choose, as Milton Friedman talks about. I'm free to choose my business. There's nobody stopping me from doing business here. Yes, I have to register a business license and pay taxes once I hit certain profits, right? But no one's telling me how I can or can't do my business. No one's telling me what I can price my business for. No one's telling me who I can or can't do business with. But you look at, like I mentioned, the crony capitalism, you have places where they'll go and they'll make certain tax treatments variable for them. So I would say for the high level, it's crony capitalism. But for regular people, when it comes to capitalism, it's capitalism. No one's stopping you from running a business here in North America. Now, let's go to socialism. Socialism, on the other hand, and I have firsthand experience through my parents, socialism, the government is your business partner. It's central planning, right? A classic example is China today. If you want to do business in China, you have to be working with the Chinese Communist Party. And they dictate the rules. They dictate everything. They're like the fucking hammer, literally like in the Russian hammer, the USSR. And so they come in and they control everything. My father had a business in former Yugoslavia. When Tito came in, the Communist Party came in, they took percentage of his business and they started dictating the rules. And so, well, everybody knows that story went, completely fell apart. Everybody knows the story of USSR. Like if we're looking at classical examples of, well, socialism, it hasn't been done right. The reason why socialism, in the classical definition of socialism, meaning centralized control, means of production, there's a council that controls everything, fails all the time, is because you have to understand this. It takes a certain type of psychological individual to want to attain that type of position within a centralized planning or a socialist party. For the most part, people who thrive or who thrive to that position, they're psychopaths, they're sociopaths. They want to control other people. And absolute power corrupts absolutely all. And so how I like to look at these two models between capitalism and socialism, capitalism being an open, let's say an open network, right? It's let's call it a decentralized node. It's an open network where people are allowed to participate in any shape or form they want. And in a socialistic system, it's a closed ecosystem based on a set of finite rules that if you don't behave with these rules, you're out. And so, well, let's look at nature. Nature is the best evidence for how a system should behave. In nature is the most pure-blooded open system possible. It's a survival of the fittest, the strongest, the smartest, and the most adaptable. It's not in a closed ecosystem. And so I like to use that example when looking at capitalism versus socialism and looking at human behavior. We know for a fact that nothing works from top down. Everything works from the ground up, slow evolution. There's something called Gall's law in biology. Gall's law states no complex organism ever evolved from another complex organism. It's a small evolution from single cellular organism to multicellular organism. And so when you're viewing the principles of capitalism versus socialism, I like to view it as a different light. Instead of viewing it from the, people like to view it from the economic perspective, which is a good way to view it. I like to view it from the laws of physics and the laws of psychology. Laws of physics state everything functions on entropy and the laws of thermodynamics. And so within open systems, you have the ability for more entropy, more thermodynamics. And so we have more experiments are allowed, more failure is allowed. And through this process, you create amazing opportunities. Let's look at real life examples. Like there is no successful socialistic pure blood. I'm talking about classical definition, socialistic country. None. Venezuela, disaster. Cuba, disaster. China, disaster. Russia was a disaster. Yugoslavia was a disaster. Every single country that attempted to do it was a disaster. Because it's plain and simple. It goes against the laws of physics and nature, and it gives power to megalomaniacs who are in charge. Now, mind you, in our system today of so-called capitalism over here, like I said, it's not true-blooded capitalism, but at least it's more of an open system. And so everything has to be based on the foundational principles of physics and nature. And so it's funny when you see leftists, especially here in North America, talking about socialism. They never lived underneath socialism. They don't understand what happened with the gulags. They don't understand what happened with Chairman Mao. They don't even understand what happened with Tito. They don't understand what happens with Chavez. They don't understand what happened with Che Guevara and Fidel Castro. Like the fucking millions of people that died underneath the umbrella or the flag of socialism. You know, they have cognitive dissonance when it comes towards that. And so this whole debate between socialism and capitalism should be redefined to debate of open systems versus closed systems. And that should be your governing point of view. We've seen in examples that the more open the system is, the better, right? And so let's continue this thought process on open systems versus closed systems. Nassim Taleb had a good saying not too long ago talking about hierarchical levels of governance. And this works for NLP, so neuro-linguistic programming within machine learning. And so we use pattern recognition, but it depends on the context within the pattern. And so what Nassim Taleb said is like, communism does work. It works with your family. You want to share everything with your family. It works with the tribe, less than 100 people. Above that, communism doesn't work. Socialism might work with a very small town. Everybody knows everybody. Maybe there's 200 people, 400 people. Beyond that, socialism doesn't work because there's too many players. There's too many variables to control, and the system has to have more of an open system. So you start very small. Communism may work with your family, socialism with a very small town, but you go to a city like Toronto, then we need to be much more conservative. We're dealing with millions of people, millions of different ideologies, millions of different variables. You can't control for all the variables. What's the best thing they can do is create fair playing rules so everybody has a right to choose. Everybody has a right to start a business. Everybody has a right to succeed. There's no discrimination. There's no favoritism, which, by the way, in socialism, the fucking favoritism is crazy. Absolutely fucking crazy. The corruption in there is obscene. People talk about corruption in our society. Yeah, there's corruption. Tell you, I know firsthand stories from back home of corruption. Then the next level up, we talk about federal. That's when we get into the libertarian system, right? Because you're talking about now nation of the United States, 300 million people. You can't have one blanketed law that applies to 300 million people of different backgrounds, of different ideologies, of different belief systems, of different makeup. You just can't. And so that's why I'm in favor of more city-states, which creates a game theoretical model. Switzerland Zug is a great example, right? You have Switzerland, then you have the cantons around Switzerland, and they have to compete against each other for proper taxation policy, proper all policies, not just taxation. Every single policy have to compete, and they have a veto right against the centralized government in Switzerland. And so this creates a game theoretical model of competition, right? And so, for example, let's say one canton in Switzerland decides to make 10% tax rate, the other one is 2%. Where do you think people are going? I always give the example here in Toronto. Let's say all of a sudden then Mississauga, our neighboring city, says no income tax. I'm the first fucking human being going to Mississauga. I don't want to pay income tax. And we see this happening in the United States. A lot of people are leaving California state. A lot of people are leaving New York state, and they're going towards Texas, and they're going towards Florida. It's cheaper taxes, right? It's very simple. That's osmosis, right? Going back to the laws of physics, right? And so this whole capitalism versus socialism, just look at it from the lens of physics and the lens of the laws of nature. And socialism always fails. Classical socialism, by the state has a means of production. But to iterate and to be fair, we are living in a capitalistic system with socialistic properties. And I always love this saying, I don't know who said this, but you can be a socialist in a capitalist system, no problem. I cannot be a capitalist in a socialist system. And there's a lot of socialists who they're propagating for equal equity of the workers, so everybody can have the ground floor rise with them, right? And I just don't understand why they can't do that today. So there's nothing stopping you and I right now going to business, giving out shares to everybody else, and be like, hey, now we're a co-op. And there's examples of co-ops. If you and I wanted to be a capitalist system or capitalist business in a socialist system, we fucking couldn't. End of story. And always remember this, for socialism to exist, it needs somebody to pillage. It needs capitalism, because capitalism, through the open free market of trade, finding the right price for the right product with the right people, creates the wealth that the socialists want to take, right? So keep that in mind. You can be a capitalist, you can be a socialist in a capitalist system, but they don't. And this goes back to the ideology. When people are spitballing you ideology of socialism or even pure-blooded capitalism, they're spitballing, and this goes to the last video I just made about puppets, they're spitballing the ideology. They haven't done their due diligence to think clearly about it, to understand what are they representing. Are you really representing a system that's killed more than 300 million people? Are you really representing that? And on the capitalist side, are you really saying, like, capitalism is are we living in true cap? We're not. You know what I mean? Like, we're living in a hybrid system. And so that's it, man. I want to leave it at that. And hopefully this video helps you about capitalism versus socialism. If you have any comments for me and questions, leave a comment below this video. Hit the subscribe button, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace out.